Alive, the first episode of Keycloak Hour of Code. There we are.
Hello, Alexander.
Which is great. Yeah, let's see. So it's the first episode. And yeah, we're curious if this format actually works out as we want it to work out. So it should be in a session that is engaging for people. And I probably need to have a look on the YouTube if that actually is working. So I'm still a bit nervous about this. How about you, Michael?
Yeah, me too, of course.
Yeah, let's double check. Here's all the technology anyway.
Oh, I think something is happening on YouTube.
Oh yeah, we have now 20 live viewers, it appears, right?
Well, I can see 15, but yeah.
So we're counting upwards, which is great.
Oh, and Bernard is commenting that that he can see us.
Very good. So I see that yeah, the chat is working, and we see all your chats, and so this is great. We now see Sebastian here, another Sebastian. That's great. So hey, cool. That's the first step. Technology is working, and let's see if we want to do something like this again. We ask you afterwards again.
Exactly.
Right. So today's topic, it's going to be persistent sessions, right, Michael? So how do you think about persistent sessions?
Yeah, I think it's a very good improvement, actually. So I'm looking forward to all feedback from people and see whether it is useful or not.
Yeah, and I think we've been working for it like for another 3, maybe 4 or 5 months. We had this in the making, and we were thinking, how can we retrofit this persistent sessions into Keycloak? And well, we wrote a small blog post about it. I'm not sure who already read this blog post. Let's see if I can probably, I need to reshare my screen. I did it earlier, but there we are. So this is the blog post that we have in our Keycloak blog. I'm also pasting it here in the chat. Not sure people had a chance to try it out. The idea is we walk you through all the steps about persistent sessions, how to how to work on this, what are the ins and outs, how we tested it with performance, and maybe it would be great to hear in the chat who has already tried it out. So if you could add tried it out to the chat, that would be great. It would help us a lot in order to actually figure out that it's working as expected for you. So we also called this an Ask Me Anything session, or Ask Us Anything session. It should actually be called, right? So it's now Michael and me here on the chat. So this is a very unique moment to ask us all the questions that you have around persistent sessions, and we will try to answer them live in the stream. We could also go to the extremes and have you also here on the stream as well. So if you want to jump on this call here, we might now be sharing a link here to the stream, and then you can join us here live in the studio and ask your questions live and discuss them with us here. So if you have ever been to a fishbowl session, in a fishbowl session you have people joining a discussion or leaving the discussions all the time. So for this session I would say we should never be more than 4 people on the stream. So then the 5th person join, one of the earlier 2 guests would then leave the stream and make space for another person to join eventually to ask their questions. So let's see, be brave, try to join us here. It's all new technology for us, and an excitement moment to meet the Keycloak community here. All right, so And why do we think then persistent sessions is so important, Michael? You want to give us your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. So persistent sessions. So what's the problem that we are trying to solve here, right? So previously we had a lot of complaints about sessions and mostly about losing sessions. That's in my opinion, it was one of the biggest pain point in Keycloak for a long time. People were trying then to work around it using different setups that were not like fully supported and maybe not even working 100% correctly in all cases.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's one of the main reasons why we started to looking into this. Or the idea was here for a long time, and now finally we found time to have a look at it and implement it. And so losing session is one thing, but there are more things that this is solving. So another thing is memory consumption. It's for sure, because like big deployments, if they have I don't know millions of sessions and storing all of them in the memory, well, it can be consuming a lot of memory, as everyone can imagine, I guess. And this is another thing that can be solved by this feature, right?
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. And it might make upgrades a lot simpler and yeah, and probably a more seamless upgrade experience of Keycloak.
Mm-hmm.
So Jason was on the studio for a second, but I didn't yet yeah, put him on the live stream yet. So Jason, if you're still there, please join again. And yeah, oh, there he is again. So Jason, welcome to the studio. You should be there in a second. If yeah, we can probably hear you, but did you also share your video? Let's see. I'm probably still struggling with the technology.
Yeah, I cannot hear anything so far.
All right, let's. Neither me. You might be muted. Now you're unmuted, Jason.
Huh.
Are you still there? Oh yeah. Okay. We might give it another try. So there's
Yeah.
a question in the chat that this would. So Alpha asked here, this would be great if we can deploy anytime now rather than planning downtime. Well, you might still have a small downtime when you're deploying. So you shut down all Keycloak nodes. You then start up the new nodes. But your users will still be logged in. So it will be a small downtime, but without the need for users to re-log in again. For this to really solve the problem of no downtime during upgrades, we need to make sure that you can actually run multiple instances at the same of Keycloak at the same time with different versions, and we still have some way to go to do that. But it's always it's on the roadmap eventually. There's also the question here, like if we turned on the feature persistent sessions, do you still need the cache InfiniSpan settings? Yes, you will still need that. So the caching of InfiniSpan is still there to cache, for example, an authentication session. So basically the moment where people are being presented the login screen. When you're seeing the login screen, you already have like an in-memory session that is then handling who has been logging in, have they entered their password yet, who's that user, from what IP address do they come from. All this information is still there. And we will keep that in memory, but only after the user completed their login with their credentials. Only then we store it into the database. And I believe this will prevent a lot of database activities that we would otherwise see, right? Otherwise, I think this, if we would put everything in the database, it would be well, I think probably a very slow solution. This way is like of the middle ground that we try to do here. Yeah, Michael, you're nodding. Anything I forgot about this?
Yeah, there is one more thing. So it's not only used for caching the users and realms and other resources, but also for caching sessions. And not only that, but not only caching, but we also use InfiniSpan caches for sending invalidation events. So this means that if one node, let's say, changes a user password or changes some configuration in the realm, we need to go through all Keycloak nodes and send a message to each Keycloak node saying, okay, this realm was changed. Please remove it from your caches. So this is also something. This is also something that for which we are using InfiniSpan, and like we won't be able to change this anytime soon. So InfiniSpan will be there with us.
Yeah, that's right. There was another question from Michael, another Michael, who asked then, does it improve memory consumption? I'd say probably yes, right?
Well, I guess it depends on your setup, but in general, yes. So the thing is that we are caching the sessions in InfiniSpan, as we already mentioned, and the higher the number of cached sessions is, the more memory consumption you have. But now with the persistent sessions, you can actually decrease the memory consumption. So if you have million sessions, you can say, okay, store only 10% of that in 10,000 sessions in InfiniSpan in the memory, and all the rest remove from the memory and load them from the database when it is needed. So that's how it improves memory consumption. Would you add something, Alexander?
Yeah, well, we know that people have sometimes millions of sessions. Like if they are in the e-commerce area and keep their user sessions around for maybe a month or several months, they have lots of sessions and they want to keep them, well, something else than their memory because they're running out of memory in their setups. People are asking if there's going to be no downtime eventually. Well, the only thing I can say today is that we are working on it. So in Keycloak 26, we will be improving Keycloak that all the internal messages will be serialized by InfiniSpan in a way that we will, actually are one step closer to running two versions of Keycloak side by side. So there's something coming up called protostream serialization, which will also give us a tooling that we can really ensure that these two versions of Keycloak will run side by side. So we'll get one step closer in Keycloak 26, but we will not be there fully in Keycloak 26. So Bernard is asking, is it possible to make differences per role so that, for example, staff can work 8 hours without having to re-authenticate? So they're not stored in the database. Well, you can't really differentiate between which data sessions are stored in a database. That's something we can't differentiate today. You can't really also choose it from realm to realm. But how can you change different timings of sessions? I believe there's a setting on a realm base, right?
Yeah, there is a setting on realm level and also on client level. So you can change the session length per client. And also we cannot choose which session is stored in the database because all of them are stored in the database. There is like, we cannot choose which session to store and which not.
But Bernard, maybe there's also this discussion we have on GitHub on persistent user sessions. Maybe you can add this to the discussion as a question if you can have at least different lengths of sessions for different user groups. I think that might be an interesting feature for the future.
Well, it might be an interesting feature in general, not only for persistent sessions.
Yeah, or in general. You're right. Thanks, Michael. Steph is asking, when do you expect persistent user sessions to be the default stable feature instead of an experimental feature? Yeah, so that's a good one. So So we'd love to make it a fully supported thing in Keycloak 26, but we really need to be sure that it's working as people expect it to work. And so at the moment we think it's feature complete. We might do an optimization here and there. So, well, if people are saying it's something they don't need, well, if we don't get any feedback at all, I say we probably remove it again, because then nobody needs it. If people say it's useful for them and they just use it in this or the other environment, this helps us a lot to estimate if it's really a good thing, a feature complete thing. If people give us lots of feedback what is missing, then we might keep it around for another release as a preview feature. I think one of the things that I'm most concerned with is then, are we stressing the database too much, right? I need to take a sip of water. I'm getting a bit sore throat here. So it really depends on how many user sessions, how many logins per second do you have, how many logins per second, how many refreshes per second, and we'd love to hear your feedback, and you might have also some numbers for us that you can share on the GitHub discussion. That would be great. So there's also the question, any recommendation, high-level guide for large InfiniSpan recommended settings? So we have a Keycloak High Availability Guide, which describes how to set up an external InfiniSpan. Maybe you want to elaborate a bit on what is then a large-scale InfiniSpan setting for you. There's also the question then from Otto asking, are authentication sessions also persisted in the database? No, they're not. We thought it would be a performance problem if we would also store them in a database, because we would write even more to the database. So our assumption would be, if you are currently logging in, those data is in memory, and you can still do rolling upgrades. You can do a lot of things here. Like rolling configuration updates on a single version of Keycloak, which is good. But the authentication session, if you would lose that authentication session, the user would currently be logging in, and if you would then press on the login button, he would get a message like, okay, something went wrong, please re-authenticate again. So it's nothing where it's disturbing the login flow a bit, but it's not. But they are currently logging in. They probably have their credentials at hand. It's nothing that happens, like, I'd say, by accident or by surprise when you currently work in an application and your session is gone. And
yeah, I would be interested in why you are asking, Otto, about this question, because, like, is it something that is causing you some pain, that losing authentication session, or feel free to add additional details in the chat.
Yeah. So, yeah, and as David said, I think, yeah, you've been guessing right about the user and client sessions. We both store them in the database now. So Thomas is joining in saying, I think you might write a custom authenticator which modifies the user session for the current user based on the role. Yeah, that might have been an answer to the previous question that we had about the different lifetime of user sessions. A custom authenticator. Yeah, I think that's one of the 2 or 3 things that actually Swiss Army knives around it. With Keycloak, you can do a lot of things with custom authenticators, but it would require you to do some Java coding.
Yeah, like, I'm not sure about that, because, like, the authenticator, it can get quite messy, I would say, adding an authenticator and changing something like that.
Okay. So you say you should rather be careful on this one. Okay, I hear you.
But but I never tried it. Maybe Thomas, if you tried it already and it works, then okay.
Yeah, Thomas, maybe you can want to join us here on this call and have some
Maybe.
more details on custom authenticators. Jason is asking, how does this persistent user session compare to offline tokens? So actually, we're leveraging a lot of the functionality that was there for offline tokens in the first place, so offline sessions, and it's basically well, those people who used offline sessions in the past to have long-running user sessions, I say those people should really try out the persistent user sessions because they work in the same way. They work in the same way, but without all the downsides you might have with the offline user sessions. The offline user sessions, for example, what was not working there, you would have a user logging in, and if a user would then log out, it wouldn't log out that offline user sessions because there was thought to be offline user session that would survive a user being logged out. Now this single log out would actually work as you would expect it from a regular user session, right? So those, again, users running persistent user sessions, offline sessions, should really try out the persistent user sessions. So now another question from Christian. We have a few thousand concurrent sessions in Keycloak in production. Do you think it can be used in production even if it is a preview feature? Well, it's a preview feature. So we tested it. We have our nightly test suite and we picked the relevant set of test cases in our regular test suite and we ran it on persistent sessions and the tests are green. We did performance testing on it. So we did, was it 150 logins and logouts per second? So that should give you an idea how much load it can handle. It's a preview feature. So preview features by their name and design are something that we can change at any time. We can also remove it. So if you say, well, previously you might have been using your online sessions and you want to keep them around and you want to keep your users logged in. If you figure out it doesn't work, you might then revert to the regular online sessions again without putting them into the database. I would also recommend that you would write that you run a load test in your test environment. We have the Keycloak benchmark project. I should probably paste a link here as well. Well, like this 150 logins per second should give you an idea if that is a larger load than you have in your production environment. So if you're running less than 150 logins per second, you should be safe if you would use a similar setup that we've been using. At the same time, we really advocate to run your own tests in your own environment to make sure that it runs as you do test. Well, you can test in production. Yeah, that's always brave. Other people still might consider testing in their test environments first. And with Keycloak benchmark, we give you some tools that you can really simulate the load, as long as you know how many logins per second you have, for example. Right, so that was Christian's question. Then it seems like we are through with the current questions we had so far. We could still.
There is one more question. Sorry, there is a question about how does this impact highly available architecture presented at Devoxx?
Sure. Yeah, let's bring that on screen.
Okay, I thought I did.
I probably clicked at the same time, so we kind of messed it up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I will leave it to you to switch this.
Anyway, so does it impact the HA architecture presented earlier this year at Devoxx? So yeah, at Devoxx, adding a bit more context here. At Devoxx, we presented an architecture where you can run 2 OpenShift clusters, running a Keycloak cluster in each of the clusters, and then connecting using InfiniSpan. So if you're running such a setup, you might not need persistent sessions so much because you always have the sessions on the other side already and have them in memory. But this setup then relies on a synchronous replication between the 2 data centers. If you have only a single site and you want to survive some more node failures or cluster failures and you want to bring things up again, I think that might give you another nice feature if you would store them in a database as well, with again some little overhead for the database. It also depends on how costly it is for you to log in your users again. For some customers, for example, they send out, when the users log in, they send out an email, they send out an SMS, they ask for a second factor. So it's really costly for them to lose this kind of sessions. Yeah, and yeah, that's then a lot of work for them to, or cost at least also to get these users back logged in. So I'd say it depends. So you need to compare these two setups, and eventually you might figure out that, I don't know, the persistent session setup is simpler for you to run, to operate in a single cluster, and then you choose it. Maybe you say you want to still run 2 OpenShift clusters. Other people want to say they want to rather go for a stretch cluster, and then this might be better for them. So there's sadly no single answer to that, I believe. Michael, what did I forget about this?
Well, I think you summarized it very well. Maybe one addition that with the persistent sessions, we are doing also some tests in highly available setup, some performance tests. So we have some numbers, and maybe in future we will document better how to use the persistent sessions in the highly available setup. But we don't have any of that now. But feel free to try it and give us feedback how it works for you in the highly available setup. That's something we are really interested in as well.
But we actually tested it, right? So we tested persistent sessions with the highly availability setup. So they actually work together. So they can be combined. So you can save it into external InfiniSpan and save it to the database at the same time. So that's possible.
Yeah.
So that's definitely tested.
And basically the same is true also for this setup, that you can then have also lower memory consumption for the external InfiniSpan, because you can again change the number of entities cached in the external InfiniSpan.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's look at our chat. So what else is in the chat? So Otto is saying, yeah, doing maybe some experiments, which is great.
This was the follow-up on the authentication session question, that there are no problems currently. That's what I was asking. Yeah, thank you for the response.
And we should probably update the docs on that one, right? I'll take that on as a note for myself to update the docs and the discussion on it.
Yeah.
So Christian is asking, when a session times out, which Keycloak instance deletes a session from a database? If Keycloak instances fail, are the sessions cleaned in the database? Yeah, so when a session times out, there's a regular cron-based run, or internal Keycloak cron-based run. So every 15 minutes, I believe, it will go to the database and see which sessions are obsolete and then delete those. And across all instances. So basically, if a 15-minute a single node of Keycloak will go to the database every 15 minutes and delete everything that's obsolete. That's, I think, timed out for more than I think there might be a grace period of 2 or 3 minutes while we still keep it in database. It's already invalid, but only then we delete it. So we want to avoid some conflicts on the database by doing that. So the thing is, if a Keycloak instance fails, the data will still be kept in the database. It only be cleaned if it really expires. That's what we're doing here. So Bernhard has another question here. Can the persistent session be used to store limited amount of session-related application data? For example, which tenant is active in the current session for multi-tenant setup? Well, yeah, I can probably show how the database table looks like, right? There's a map in there called, what's it called? It's called
Notes, I think.
Notes. Yeah, it's Notes. And let's see.
So I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly, but if you have, for example, an authenticator that is adding some additional nodes to the sessions, there is no change in that. Like the persistent sessions will persist the same data as previous sessions stored in the Infinispan.
So yeah, let's share my screen on this one. So this is, hopefully it's readable. So I'm looking now at the offline user session table, and here, maybe I should probably zoom in a bit more. I have here a table called offline user session, and in this table there's a data field which basically contains JSON session data. And when I look in here, there's some of the data that is not mapped to a column, so it's more like a generic field a blob where we put more columns in there that we don't want to index, and that makes it a bit more simpler for us to go through non-breaking schema changes. And here are the nodes that Michael was talking about, right? So there are some nodes that Keycloak already puts in there, like a Keycloak device node, which is telling, I think it's base64 encoded, what is the browser that you're using, the authentication time, authentication is completed. And these nodes, I think it was another authenticator, you could put things in there once you write an extension, and then look at this JSON. All right, I should drink more water. Right, so yeah, that might have answered that. So let's see. If Steph is asking, if we upgrade to the new Keycloak version with persistent user sessions disabled, will there be a way to migrate existing user sessions later on when we enable them? Yeah, that's one of the features that didn't make it for the Keycloak 25 release. Well, please start a discussion for that on the GitHub discussion that we shared earlier. So we really see a good use case for that. At the same time, we still need to figure out how important it is for the user community. Also, yeah, we were wondering how you would enable it. Would you first scale down Keycloak maybe to 2 nodes, to 3 nodes? If they're only in memory, you need to do that during a rolling upgrade. Yeah, it would be really interesting to hear if the sessions you want to migrate are existing only in memory, or if they're existing in an external Infinispan, or if they're existing in a JDBC store. And yeah, the problem we are facing is like, how would we do that in a rolling upgrade? While maybe new user sessions are being created, while this change is being rolled out. So we still need to make up our minds how to do it in a reliable way. Yeah, for now we'd say, if you're with non-persistent sessions, you need to merge or migrate. Well, they will not be migrated to persistent sessions, at least not with Keycloak 25. And yeah, we need to find something that works nicely and simply for that.
Well, yeah, I would add that we really tried to add this to Keycloak 25. We had a lot of discussions around this. And Alexander, it seems I cannot paste links into the chat, but I sent you a private message with the issue where I did a write-up about how it is difficult to do the migration. So maybe you can share that issue.
Yeah, I just shared it now.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can create a discussion out of it. And if you have any feedback on that, why this is not true, what is written there, or how this can be done, it would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, Steph, so take it as an invitation. Yeah, so Steph is, that's adding more context to the previous discussion. We're currently blocked from upgrading to Keycloak 25 because we can't afford losing the sessions and then not allowed to use experimental features, right? So, yeah, there are always good reasons for not using experimental features, right? Still, it would be great help if you could try out this feature maybe in a test environment with Keycloak 25 and provide us the feedback if it would be in that way that it's currently in 25, if we would use it this way or give it that way into Keycloak 26 and make it fully supported, if this is then the feature you want to use. That's fine. So continuing on to Kevin, we set sessions to remain active for 90 days, causing InfiniSpan to consume a lot of memory. Yeah, that's what we've seen in the past a lot, right? Despite external InfiniSpan persisting to a database, pods restarts causes Keycloak errors. So yeah, with Keycloak 24, it was that the Keycloak functionality relied that all the sessions, even if there's an external InfiniSpan, even if there's a database, that all these sessions remain in memory. And this is something we fixed for persistent user sessions in Keycloak 25. So we reworked the old functionality looked into in memory with Keycloak, and like to list user sessions, list sessions for a user, sessions for a client, clear user sessions. All this functionality relied on all the sessions to be in memory. And what we then did for Keycloak 25, when you have persistent sessions enabled, we only keep 10,000 sessions in memory. And this is now basically solved for persistent user sessions. So for you, Kevin, I would recommend you to really try it out and see how that works in your setup.
Yeah, this is exactly what we are aiming for, basically, these kind of setups to solve this issue.
Dorut is asking, in general, do we think Keycloak can handle 5,000 requests per second of token exchange and or DCR flow in general? I'm not familiar with that acronym DCR. Michael, I'm not sure if you can help me out here, or maybe the chat can help me out here. 5,000 requests per second of token exchange. That might be for a database a lot to handle. I'm not sure. I never tried if token exchange would then create a new session, would it? Or would it update the session? I probably need to double check on that. That might be a good question. Well, 5,000 requests might be handleable if you don't touch the database. So that's something, if you scale it up both horizontally and vertically in a good way. I think we probably need to, the most of the time we would do a lot of token signing when we exchange tokens. And you need to ensure that the data that you're using for that is in memory, that you have enough memory or cache is configured for realm data, for user data. And also probably that the sessions should all be in memory. Then it sounds reasonable, but I would definitely test it. I think that might be 10 times the number that we currently run in our nightly builds, but we only have a smaller setup on our nightly builds.
So Alexander, do you remember whether we have a scenario in Keycloak benchmark for token exchange?
To be honest, I think we have a token refresh, but not a token exchange.
Yeah.
So we would really love to see that contribution, but it needs to be probably developed.
Oh, so Thomas is commenting that token exchange might lead to a new client session being created.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then it's definitely a writing to the database, and then we should probably test. Well, it's part of the test suite, I believe, but I never tested it explicitly for performance. But then you're writing to the database, and then your database would probably need to cope with 5,000 commits per second. If your database is of a reasonable size, it might be possible, but it might be beyond what your database can handle. David is going. We already exchanged issue about max commit session. Everybody's for large cluster for value cache. It should you consider it to be optimum good value, right? I'd say it should be in the 90s. That would be my guess here. 90s, 95. That would be my suggestion here. So another question from Daphna. Is there a difference between an offline refresh flow and a persistent user refresh flow? I might be a bit lost here. Refresh flow?
Well, so refreshing tokens, I would say there is no difference between those because it's still loading a user session from the database, regardless whether it is online or offline, and then putting a new value to the last session refresh.
Mm-hmm.
But I might be wrong. Maybe someone will correct me in the chat.
Okay. So going on with the chat, Thomas saying about the set and arbitrary user data like, yes, currently selected tenant. We discussed it earlier. Some thumbs up from Bernard and Dor. Yeah, Nico also joined, saying also hi to Nico. Again, if you joined later to the party, please join us here in our studio. Let's see, I'm pasting the link again. Let's see if somebody managed to join us in our studio. We're still exploring this technology. I hope we're doing not too bad here. So, Dor is now adding the dynamic client registration flow. Okay, I'll definitely have to say I'm not familiar with that one. Yeah, something to try out. So David is asking, we have to test it, not so easy, but you are confident to migrate 2 million sessions and 2 million client sessions from a DDBC storage when upgrading from Keycloak 24 to 25? Yes, I'm confident that this works. I did a test, and actually with Keycloak 25 we also enabled JDBC batch writing, so it should be hopefully reasonably fast. The functionality to migrate, so what we deliver out of the box is the migration from 24 to 25. If you upgrade from 24 to 25, you try to migrate your sessions if you enable persistent session when you start the first time Keycloak 25. If you're into Keycloak and into a bit of Java programming, you will find the migration code in the persistent session. What's it called?
Persistent user session provider.
Thank you. Persistent user session provider. Yeah, long term. So the code is there, and you could take that as a blueprint to write the kind of migration you want to do in your environment. So you could call it, well, given that you do some Java programming, you could basically call it at any time to do the migration from one store to another, or model your own migration based on that setup or that snippets of code that you find there. So if you do that, we again love to hear from you. What you are trying out there, how it's working for you. If you think you found a setup that would be useful to others, we would be happy to hear about it and probably include it in a future version of Keycloak. So that would be great. So basically, these 2 million user sessions, well, we will be reading from a database, basically a sequential scan of a database, and then, or the external InfiniSpan sequential scan and then read it from there, copying it over the data in memory and putting it into the database, I think in hundreds of sessions per commit, something around that, I believe. So it should be fast. If it's not, we have to have a look and optimize it a bit more.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we explained already how the migration works, and just to avoid the confusion about migrating also from the embedded InfiniSpan, right? Should we touch on that?
Yeah, do that.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So the thing is that so the current migration is supported only for migrating the sessions from some external storage. So either external InfiniSpan, or if you have a JDBC store configured on the InfiniSpan level. Otherwise, when you are upgrading to Keycloak 25, you need to stop all your pods, and therefore you are losing all the sessions that were stored in the memory. But I see that David is asking that he tries to migrate from the JDBC store. So in that case, it should work from Keycloak 24 to 25.
Yeah, that's right. So Thomas is saying, I think a dynamic client registration test would be worth adding to the benchmark suite. So I think we found a volunteer for that. Hello, Thomas. Okay. So Sebastian is asking, how can I easily see how many open user sessions my Keycloak instance or InfiniSpan behind currently has, right? Yeah, so if you have persistent sessions enabled, you could look into the database, into this one table called offline user sessions. How many open user sessions you have with a current Keycloak instance like 24 or any earlier version, you can enable Keycloak metrics. And I think with Keycloak 25 or 24, we enabled them by default, did we? I kind of forgot about this one. At some point,
I think we did. Well,
I should probably pull up the documentation for that. So I put it into the chat again and share my screen. So there's a guide saying enable Keycloak metrics, and well, it could be as adding this feature enabled metrics, and then you can query the metrics. It will include JVM metrics, which are definitely helpful to running something like this in production. And you can also, it also includes caching metrics. Let's see, so yeah, we should do another session on metrics anyway, right? And depending on your version of Keycloak, sometimes you need to go to the InfiniSpan cache XML and add some more entries in there. But with the very latest version, once you enable metrics, you will see the cache metrics there all the time. And then you will go to the metrics of InfiniSpan, and the metrics of InfiniSpan show, for example, how many entries are in the cache. And for the user and client sessions, there are two caches. And the number of entries in that cache is the number of currently open user sessions that you have. Yeah, I think it would maybe a bit long explanation for that, but yeah, let's see. Michael, could you maybe look up the dashboard in the meantime that we have in the Keycloak benchmark project? Not sure if that's possible. Maybe we can show that as well on the screen. We hope to have that maybe eventually be a bit more productized, but let's see about that.
I guess we have some pictures in the documentation of Keycloak benchmark, right?
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, maybe you can find it. I might go on to the next question for a second. David is asking, yeah, okay. We will definitely love to have the feedback on the migration. Yeah, and Thomas, there is no official configuration option for the session batch updates. Yes, that's true. Session provider, And let's see, we probably didn't make it configurable, that's right. But it's 100, it's not configurable. Like every 100 entries it will write to the database. And every 1,000 entries it will write something to the console that you see how it's progressing. It's not configurable for now. If you want to make it configurable, we could still do a patch release or an upgrade for somebody with a pull request. It might not be then a fully fledged command line option, but having a --SPI option there could definitely be a thing for the user sessions, for the migration of user sessions. So SPI user sessions InfiniSpan max batch size, which defaults to 4. Okay, but this is something different. We're writing, well, when we're writing persistent sessions to the database, we're trying to batch them, so we don't have too many transactions. And we will, so the more CPUs you have, the faster your setup is. Let's see, max batch size. So the more persistent session updates we try to do in one batch to the database. So this is more of an optimization to get things to the database as fast as possible when you're running under high load. This is not the batch size when it comes to the migration. Yeah, okay. Apparently I lost, or I forgot to do the most obvious thing in the Keycloak console. You can check for the sessions. Yeah. Do you actually see the number there? Or there's a rest. You can have the pages and then scroll the pages, which is a bit awkward and might be a bit slow. I think there's a rest. There's a REST interface that you can call, like how many sessions a particular client has. There's something around that.
Yeah, that's the bug that you were fixing some time ago, right? About that.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, about the metrics, I haven't found good pictures in the documentation, but I can share my screen and show the Grafana dashboard we have from the cluster.
Please do that. Yeah.
Okay, so let's try whether this works. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see it. We might want to zoom in a bit, but it's...
Yeah, of course. Like that. So in Keycloak benchmark, there are a few JSONs containing these dashboards. And so one of them is a dashboard that is like focused on Keycloak perf tests. So this dashboard contains information about the processor's usage and memory and database, JDBC connection utilization, and this kind of stuff. So you can find all of these here. I can find some nicer, let's say, no, I need more. So every morning we are running some performance tests. So you can see, for example, based on the CPU utilization or the JDBC connection pool utilization, that we have here some spikes. For example, here at 7:50, there was running something. But what Alexander was mentioning before, it was the InfiniSpan metrics. So if you have a look at the metrics from InfiniSpan, you can then see how many entries are in each pod in the memory. So I will again have a look at the last 12 hours. And you can then see here that this is containing also metrics about the external InfiniSpan that we are using. But if you have a look only at Keycloak pods, you can then see that each Keycloak pod contains about 60,000 of sessions. Well, this requires a little bit of computations because we are setting number of owners to 2. This means that each session is on and is present in at least two Keycloak nodes. So it means that we created. Yeah. Now I cannot. Alexander, can you help me with computing this?
Probably not. So I'm good, not good with math in my head. But yeah, it's
anyway. But yeah, I can show what metrics we are using for this. So if I use edit, we are then using these vendors approximate entries, vendor statistics approximate entries in memory. And this then contains a label about cache that is used, a namespace.
yeah. And if you then zoom out again, so this is like showing one test run, right, where we have lots of sessions in memory. And the other two test runs afterwards, they have a smaller bump. And they also show that we use less memory in those two when we were running with persistent sessions, like we have only 10,000 entries in memory.
Yeah, exactly.
That's then the difference between persistent sessions and non-persistent sessions enabled.
And the same for external InfiniSpan. These are InfiniSpan pods, and they are also limited to 10,000 sessions. And here with the persistent sessions, the computation is not needed because we don't have the number of owners set to 2. But since we know that the sessions are stored in the database, we no longer need to have them also in 2 InfiniSpan instances. And therefore, here we are sure that we have 30,000 sessions across all Keycloak pods, since we have 3 pods.
Yeah, thanks for showing that. That was, I think, very good for our audience to see that. The question was in the chat, familiar with Datadog? Never used Datadog myself, but I believe anything that's Prometheus-style metrics could nowadays be imported by any other monitoring tool that we have today. Probably the last question of today that I see here, there is Sebastian asking if 3 Keycloak servers have 60,000 sessions each, and each session is kept twice in 2 servers. That's 90k sessions overall. Yeah, I think that's the math we've been looking for. Thanks, Sebastian, for that.
Yeah.
I can't do math and talk at the same time. Anyway.
Me too.
Good. Yeah, I think it has been an exciting session for us. We want to finish on time, at least on the first session, right, of Keycloak Hour of Code. That's why I called an hour. It was great to have so many questions here. I really encourage you to join our discussion on persistent sessions. And even if you're not joining it, you can still push the subscribe button on the discussion to get updated when there are news on this topic. If you like this kind of session and this format, please also reach out to Michael and me. If you like it, reach out. If you don't like it and have improvement ideas, also reach out to us. If we don't get any feedback, we might think nobody really watched us, only bots. And then we might not do it again. So please reach out with your ideas, and then we might do it again. Okay, thanks a lot. Wherever you're on the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and have a nice rest of the day. See you around. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.